When most people picture wartime survival, they think of rows of canvas tents flapping under rain, soldiers huddled inside while the wind howls outside. But here's the truth. Tents were a fair-weather friend. In the chaos of World War II, they ripped, soaked through, and failed when nature turned against them. The soldiers who truly endured the worst storms didn't rely on fabric. They relied on the earth itself. That's right, the most effective shelter of the war wasn't made of poles or cloth. It was dug from the ground beneath their boots. And what's wild is that this forgotten trick from 80 years ago still outperforms many modern shelters today. Survivalists, listen up, because what those soldiers built with nothing more than a shovel and a poncho could keep you alive in the wild far better than a $500 tent ever could. During World War II, soldiers quickly learned a brutal truth. Tents were unreliable under fire or in storms. When the rain came sideways or artillery shattered the horizon, the smart ones stopped fighting nature and started using it. They dug in, literally. Instead of trying to stand against the wind, they went beneath it. They carved slit trenches, foxholes and dugouts straight into the earth. These weren't just holes, they were stormproof, bomb-resistant and nearly invisible shelters that nature itself reinforced. A simple poncho or sheet of canvas stretched across the top served as a roof, but the real protection came from the walls of packed soil surrounding them. Wind couldn't tear them down. Rain ran off their roofs. And unlike a tent, they couldn't blow away, because they were the ground. For soldiers on every front, Europe, Africa, the Pacific, the dugout was survival distilled to its purest form. In these sodden fields of Normandy, troops dug into hedgerows to escape the downpour. In the desert storms of North Africa, where tents shredded like paper, soldiers burrowed into sand for stability. And in the Pacific jungles, drenched in monsoon rain, both American and Japanese forces turned to the same solution: Earth. This wasn't just about weather. Dugouts saved lives under bombardment. The soil absorbed shock waves from nearby explosions, something no tent pole could ever dream of doing. It kept men hidden from aerial scouts, insulated from cold, and even muffled the sounds of movement. There's a reason foxholes became a universal military term. It worked. The process was beautifully simple, something every soldier could do with just an entrenching tool. First, they picked their ground, slightly elevated so water wouldn't collect. Then came the dig. Even a shallow trench a foot deep offered immediate protection from the wind and shrapnel. They'd stretch a poncho, tarp or branches across the top, weighing it down with soil or stones. That created a low, stable roof. Some soldiers added a thin layer of grass or mud for camouflage. Inside, they'd line the floor with straw, pine needles, or even spare clothing to insulate themselves from the cold ground. Drainage was key. They carved small channels around the perimeter to guide rainwater away. Simple physics, perfect execution. What resulted wasn't a hole in the ground. It was a fortress. A few soldiers working together could build a full dugout in under an hour. During longer campaigns, troops reinforced their shelters with timber or corrugated metal, turning them into semi-permanent bunkers that held out through weeks of bombardment and rain. These makeshift homes outlasted tents, tarps, and sometimes entire camps. Here's the kicker. This World War II hack is still one of the smartest ways to build a stormproof shelter today. Anyone into bushcraft, survival or prepping knows that the environment itself is the best defense. The dugout method is a masterclass in using terrain rather than fighting it. If you were caught outdoors in a storm with nothing but a tarp and a shovel, this method could mean the difference between discomfort and disaster. Step 1. Choose your site carefully. Go for slightly raised ground, never a valley or riverbed. Step 2. Dig deep enough for your body to fit comfortably with soil walls that block the wind. Step 3. Cover the top with your tarp or poncho and weigh it down. Finally, insulate the inside and carve a tiny trench around it for drainage. That's it. You've just built a stormproof, wind-resistant and nearly invisible shelter, just like the soldiers who survived the worst conditions in history. Even with no tools, a strong stick can serve as your digger. The secret lies not in equipment, but in mindset, working with the land, not against it. The brilliance of the World War II dugout wasn't its design, it was its philosophy. It proved that survival isn't about gadgets or gear, but adaptability. The men who used this technique weren't looking for comfort. They were fighting for their lives. Yet the same principles that kept them alive under shell fire can keep a modern camper dry in a thunderstorm. Think about it. A tent may look impressive, but when the storm rolls in, the wind rips through guy lines and rain floods the floor. Meanwhile, a dugout, just a humble hole in the earth, stays steady. It's low profile, quiet, and nearly immune to the chaos above. There's something, well, poetic about that. The strongest shelters don't rise high, they go deep. Now, let's say you're out in the wilderness with just the bare minimum of gear, and suddenly the weather turns violent. Instead of rushing to pitch a tent in the wind, you do what those soldiers did. Grab your shovel or knife and dig a depression. Then just cover it with your poncho or tarp, secure it with stones, and honestly, let the earth handle the rest. By staying low and shielded, you stay warmer, drier, and, well, a whole lot safer. It's simple engineering backed by history's toughest test, war. In long-term wilderness or bug-out scenarios, this method also saves you from hauling heavy gear. Really, just a compact tarp and an entrenching tool are enough. You carry less and survive more. The forgotten shelter trick of World War II wasn't about technology, it was about intelligence. It taught us that when the weather or world turns against you, the ground beneath you can be your greatest ally. Soldiers trusted it when everything else failed, and it still works today. So, the next time someone tells you they've got the best stormproof tent, tell them about the dugout, the shelter that outlasted bullets, bombs and tempests, the one built not by engineers but by necessity, because survival isn't about comfort, it's about endurance. And for those who love real history and the lessons it hides, make sure you subscribe to HistoryHQ and share this story with fellow history buffs and survivalists. There are more forgotten secrets waiting to be uncovered, and you won't want to miss the next one.